She lived in a small, crowded house at the edge of the city. The walls were old, the floors creaked, and the roof leaked whenever it rained. Money was always tight, and most days her family had just enough to eat. But despite all the struggles around her, she carried a spark inside her that no hardship could dim. That spark was music. Ever since she could remember, she loved the sound of the piano. Her family did not have a new one or even a proper one. Instead, there was an old, battered piano in the corner of their tiny living room. Its keys were uneven, some of them sticking, and a few notes didn't even make the right sound. To anyone else, it was just a broken instrument, but to her, it was magic. Every time she sat in front of it, she felt alive. She would place her small hands on the keys, close her eyes, and let her imagination run wild. Her neighbors often watched her play, shaking their heads. "Why does she bother? That old piano is useless," they would say. Some people laughed, thinking she would never get anywhere with so little. Even some friends teased her. But she never cared. Music was her world, her escape from hunger, worries, and the noise of life. It was her way of telling herself and the world that she mattered. She spent hours every day practicing. Sometimes she played songs she had heard on the radio. Other times she created melodies herself. She had no teacher, no fancy lessons, and no books with complicated notes. Everything came from her heart. When she made mistakes, she didn't get upset. She tried again and again until the sounds felt right. Slowly, she began to discover something special. Even with her simple, old piano, she could make people feel emotions, from happiness to sadness, just through her playing. One afternoon, as she was practicing a soft melody, she overheard a conversation between her older sister and a neighbor. They were talking about a music competition being held in the city. It was organized by a big company, and the CEO, a person known for being serious and critical, would personally listen to all the performances. The winner would get a prize that could change their life, a chance to study music properly, access to real instruments, and recognition in the world of music. Her heart skipped a beat. The thought of performing in front of so many people, especially the CEO, was terrifying. She had never played for strangers before, let alone a powerful person who could decide the future of her dream. And yet, something inside her whispered that this was her chance. She felt a mixture of fear and excitement swirling in her chest. What if she failed? What if the old piano let her down at the worst moment? But the thought of not trying was even worse. She wanted to take that step, no matter how impossible it seemed. The next few days were difficult. Her family was poor, and the entry fee for the competition, though not huge, was still a lot of money for them. She worried about asking for it, afraid her parents would say no. But she also knew that opportunities like this were rare. Finally, with a deep breath, she told them about it. Her parents were worried at first. They didn't want her to be disappointed or humiliated. But when they saw the determination in her eyes, they agreed to let her try. They scraped together what little money they had, and with a mixture of hope and nerves, she registered for the competition. Every day leading up to the event, she practiced more than ever. She worked on her favorite pieces, she experimented with new melodies, and she imagined herself playing in front of the CEO. She would stand in front of her old piano, close her eyes, and picture the crowded hall, the bright lights, and the watchful eyes of the audience. She imagined the feeling of her music filling the room, touching people's hearts. Sometimes she got frustrated when the old piano didn't cooperate or when she couldn't reach the notes she wanted. But she never gave up. Every wrong note was just another step toward getting it right. Even though she lived in poverty, she never let it define her. She didn't care about fancy clothes, expensive instruments, or the opinions of others. She only cared about the music inside her. And that music, pure and true, was growing stronger every day. It was a small flame in her life, but it was powerful enough to guide her through the darkest moments, giving her courage she didn't know she had. By the time the day of the competition arrived, she felt a mix of excitement and nervousness that she could hardly describe. She wore the only dress she had that was clean and neat, and she carried her confidence like a shield. She knew that the other contestants would have grand pianos, professional outfits, and trained teachers cheering them on. She had none of that. She only had her old piano, her small hands, and her determination. As she walked into the competition hall, she felt a rush of emotions. The room was bright, the audience buzzing with anticipation, and she could see the CEO sitting at the front observing carefully. The other contestants looked confident, almost arrogant, as if victory was already theirs. Some of them noticed her and whispered among themselves. She could hear a few snickers. "Look at her," they said. "She won't last a minute on that broken piano." For a moment doubt tried to creep in. Her heart pounded and her hands shook slightly. But then she remembered why she had come. She remembered the hours she had spent practicing, the melodies she had created from her heart, the belief that music could speak even when words failed. She took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and approached the piano. This was her moment, and she was ready to give everything she had. She sat down, placed her fingers gently on the keys, and closed her eyes. The hall was silent, everyone waiting to see what the poor girl would do. And then, slowly, she began to play. The competition hall was alive with energy. Bright lights shone down on polished grand pianos, and contestants moved confidently around the stage. Each of them seemed ready, with flawless posture, neatly pressed clothes, and an air of certainty that spoke of hours of training and expensive lessons. She looked around quietly, feeling the weight of the moment. She was small, dressed simply, and carrying nothing but her determination. Her old piano might not even sound perfect, but it was all she had, and she trusted it. The audience was already filling the seats. Some people whispered about who would win. Some looked curious about the poor girl who had somehow registered. The murmurs made her heart race, but she tried to focus. She reminded herself that this was not about appearances or money. This was about music, about sharing what was in her heart with everyone listening. As the contest began, she watched the other contestants perform. Some played fast, flashy pieces that showed technical skill. Others played slow, emotional songs that tugged at the audience's hearts. Many of them received polite applause, and a few got genuine admiration. She noticed the CEO watching carefully, his expression serious and almost unreadable. He did not clap unnecessarily, and when he did, it was always slow and measured. Everyone in the room seemed to respect his judgment, and that only made her more nervous. When her turn came, she walked to the stage, her small hands trembling slightly. She could hear the whispers again, this time closer. Some contestants leaned over to each other and chuckled. "She doesn't belong here," one of them whispered. "That piano is a joke." She could have let the words hurt her, could have allowed fear to take over. But instead she took a deep breath, remembering all the times she had practiced in her tiny living room, playing when no one was listening, pouring her feelings into every note. She sat down at the piano. The keys were old and sticky, some barely making the right sound. She pressed them gently at first, just to test the feel. She could feel the eyes of the audience and the CEO on her, waiting for her to start. The room went quiet, almost like it was holding its breath. She closed her eyes, letting her mind drift to the melodies she had imagined so many times before. She remembered the joy of playing, the way music could make her forget hunger, the sound of rain on the roof, and the laughter of her little brother when she played something silly just to make him smile. All those memories became the foundation for what she was about to play. As she began, something magical happened. The first few notes were soft, delicate, almost hesitant, but full of emotion. Slowly, her confidence grew, and her fingers moved more freely. She did not try to copy the other contestants or play complicated pieces she had never learned. She played what she felt, letting her emotions guide her hands. The melody was simple but full of life, rising and falling like the story of her own journey. The audience began to notice. At first there were a few polite claps, then whispers of amazement. People leaned forward in their seats, trying to catch every note. Even the CEO, who had been silent and serious until now, straightened in his chair, his eyes focused on her hands. He listened carefully as the music filled the room, each note carrying her story, the struggles, the dreams, and the hope that had kept her playing for so long. Some of the other contestants exchanged nervous glances. They had been sure that she would falter, that the old piano would betray her, or that her lack of formal training would show. But now, seeing her play with such emotion and skill, their confidence wavered. They could not deny that she was different, that something about her performance was captivating. It was not just the notes she played. It was the feeling behind them, the truth in every melody got. As the piece continued, she allowed herself to smile a little. She could feel the music connecting with the people in the room. The sound of her old piano, though imperfect, had a raw beauty that could not be replicated by any fancy instrument. Each mistake, each uneven note, somehow added to the emotion, making the performance more real, more human. She realized that it was not about perfection. It was about honesty, and she had plenty of that. When she finally finished, there was a moment of silence. The audience sat frozen, stunned by what they had just heard. For a few seconds, it felt like time had stopped. Then slowly, claps began to break out, first polite, then louder, more genuine. Some people stood, unable to contain their admiration. The CEO remained seated, his face serious, but his eyes were no longer cold. There was a hint of a smile, a spark of approval that made her heart leap. She stood, slightly shaking, and took a small bow. She could feel the warmth of the audience's appreciation, and even though she had been scared at the start, now she felt proud. She had faced the challenge, not by being the best or the flashiest, but by being herself and letting her music speak for her. That was her victory, and she could feel it in every beat of her heart. Walking off the stage, she felt a mixture of relief and excitement. She knew that this was only the beginning. The competition was not over, and there were still challenges ahead. But for the first time, she understood that talent and determination could shine even in the most unlikely places. Her old piano, her simple clothes, her humble beginnings, they did not matter. What mattered was the passion and honesty she had brought to the music, and that could never be taken away. As she left the hall that day, she could not stop smiling. People came up to her, praising her performance, asking how she had learned to play so beautifully. Some were surprised to learn that she had no formal training. Others were inspired by her courage. Even the whispers of doubt from earlier had vanished. Replaced by admiration and respect, she knew that her journey would not be easy. There would be more challenges, tougher pieces to play, and more judgment from people who did not understand her. But she also knew that she had discovered something powerful, the ability to touch hearts with her music, to show the world that where you come from does not define who you can be. That day marked a turning point. She had faced the competition, faced the CEO's critical eyes, and had not only survived, but shone. It was proof that dreams could grow even in the harshest conditions. Proof that talent and perseverance could overcome doubt and scarcity. And most importantly, it was proof to herself that she was capable of far more than she had ever imagined. After her first performance, the young girl felt a mixture of relief and excitement. She had played from her heart and had surprised the audience, even the CEO, but the competition was far from over. There was a twist she had not expected. The CEO, who had been observing all the contestants closely, announced that he wanted to personally challenge a few of them. He wanted to see not just their skill, but their creativity, their ability to think on their feet, and their courage to take risks. Her heart sank a little. She had done her best, but now the pressure felt heavier. What if she couldn't rise to the challenge? She had no formal training, no experience performing under such scrutiny, and the other contestants looked confident, almost unshakable. Yet, deep down, she knew she could not turn away. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the chance to truly show who she was through her music. When her name was called, a quiet wave of murmurs spread across the hall. People were curious, some skeptical. How could the girl with the old piano and humble appearance handle a direct challenge from the CEO himself? She walked forward slowly, trying to steady her nerves. Her hands felt cold, and her stomach churned with butterflies, but she reminded herself to breathe. She had faced fear before, practicing alone for hours, imagining herself performing for someone important. This was just another stage, another chance to pour her heart into the music. The CEO's eyes were sharp, and his presence was intimidating. He asked her to play a piece he had never heard before, something spontaneous, a creation of her own. "Show me what you can do," he said simply. With a look that made the challenge clear, this was not about memorization or repetition. This was about originality and courage. For a moment, doubt crept in. How could she possibly create something on the spot, when she had never been formally trained to compose music? But then she remembered all the melodies she had imagined over the years, all the pieces she had made up while playing on her old piano at home. She realized that she already had everything she needed: her heart, her memory, and her creativity. She just had to trust herself. She sat down at the piano, fingers hovering over the keys. The room was silent, all eyes on her, waiting. Even the other contestants, who had looked so confident before, seemed tense now, as if they had suddenly realized that she might surprise them again. She closed her eyes and let the music come to her. It started softly, almost hesitantly, a gentle tune that rose and fell like the story of her life. As she played, something extraordinary happened. Her fingers moved naturally, almost as if guided by an invisible hand. She didn't think about perfection or technique. Instead, she focused on the emotions she wanted to express: the struggle, the hope, the determination that had carried her this far. Each note was deliberate, each pause meaningful. The old piano, with its uneven keys, seemed to respond to her will, filling the room with a sound that was raw, emotional, and beautiful. The audience was captivated. People leaned forward, listening carefully, sensing that they were witnessing something special. The CEO's eyes narrowed slightly, his serious expression unreadable, but there was a subtle change in his posture. He was leaning in, paying close attention, watching how she turned uncertainty into music. He could see her courage, her creativity, and her ability to transform a simple, imperfect instrument into something extraordinary. Her performance grew bolder as she continued. She experimented with new rhythms, playful trills, and unexpected pauses. She created contrasts between soft and loud, slow and fast, making the music alive with emotion. The other contestants exchanged nervous glances. They had prepared polished pieces, but they were not creating something entirely new on the spot. They were following rules, while she was breaking them beautifully, and it was clear to everyone watching that her performance was extraordinary. As she reached the climax of her piece, she poured all her energy into every note. Her heart beat in rhythm with the music, her fingers danced across the keys with confidence she hadn't known she had. She could feel the connection between herself and the audience, the way the music seemed to touch their hearts, even moving some to tears. This was the power of true expression, something that no training or expensive instrument could replicate. When she finally finished, the hall was silent for a heartbeat. Then slowly applause erupted. It started quietly, then grew louder and louder, until the room was filled with the sound of admiration. Some people stood, unable to contain their astonishment. The CEO remained seated for a moment, letting the room calm, and then he slowly stood, clapping with measured approval. His face, usually so stern, now showed genuine respect. He walked toward her and said in a calm but firm voice, "That was remarkable. You not only played beautifully, but you created something unique. You have courage and talent that cannot be taught." His words were simple, but they carried immense weight. To hear praise like this from someone so influential, someone who had judged countless musicians, was overwhelming. She felt a mixture of relief, pride, and disbelief. She had done it. She had faced the CEO's personal challenge, and not only survived, but excelled. The fear that had gripped her earlier was replaced by a warm sense of accomplishment. She realized that her music had spoken louder than any words, louder than any doubt, louder than the whispers of those who had mocked her, walking off the stage. She felt lighter, freer, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She could hear people talking about her performance, praising her creativity, and even the other contestants looked at her differently now. She had earned their respect not through appearances or expensive lessons, but through courage, talent, and honesty. That day, she understood something important. Challenges are not meant to break you. They are meant to show what you are capable of, to push you beyond your comfort zone, and to reveal the strength and creativity within you. Her old piano, her simple clothes, and her humble background had not been weaknesses, they had been part of her story. Part of the music that made her performance so genuine. As she left the hall, she could still hear the echoes of her music lingering in the room, touching everyone who had listened. She knew that this was only the beginning. There would be more performances, more challenges, and more opportunities to prove herself. But she also knew that she had discovered something powerful that no one could take away: the ability to create, to inspire, and to show the world who she truly was, no matter the circumstances. After her extraordinary performance for the CEO, the hall was buzzing. People were still talking about the girl with the old piano, the one who had surprised everyone with her talent and creativity. Even the contestants who had seemed confident before now looked uneasy. She could see the change in their expressions. They were no longer sure of themselves. While she felt a quiet strength growing inside her, the CEO, who had been calm and measured up until now, finally spoke to the audience. His voice carried across the room, clear and serious. "We have witnessed something remarkable today," he said. "Talent can come from anywhere. It does not matter where someone starts or what they have. What matters is their passion, their courage, and their heart." His words were simple, but they felt powerful. She could hear them, and it was as if they were meant just for her. The next moment was one she would never forget. The CEO invited her to play again, this time in front of the entire audience as the final performance of the day. Some of the other contestants whispered to each other, some shook their heads, and a few even laughed quietly, perhaps thinking she would crumble under the pressure. But she only felt a sense of calm determination. She had already faced fear, already proven herself to someone powerful, and now it was time to play for the world. For the hearts of everyone listening, she walked onto the stage, her steps slow but steady. She could feel the eyes of hundreds of people on her, and for a moment the weight of it almost made her pause. But then she looked at her old piano and remembered all the hours she had spent practicing in her tiny living room. She remembered the melodies she had created alone, the songs she had imagined when no one was around, and the joy music had brought her even in difficult times. That memory filled her with courage. Sitting down, she placed her fingers on the keys and took a deep breath. The room grew silent, the audience leaning forward, curious to see what she would do next. She started softly, playing a melody that was gentle and emotional. Her music did not try to impress with speed or complexity. Instead, it spoke directly to the heart. Each note carried a story of struggle, of hope, of determination, and everyone in the room felt it. As she played, the atmosphere in the hall changed. People who had been skeptical or dismissive now sat in awe. The other contestants, who had once looked so confident, seemed almost forgotten. The CEO's expression, usually so unreadable, softened. His eyes followed her hands. But it was clear that he was no longer judging in the same way. He was listening, truly listening. As if her music had reached something deep inside him, the melody grew stronger. More confident, yet it was still full of emotion. She added soft variations, unexpected pauses, and playful twists, letting her creativity flow freely. Her old piano, despite its flaws, responded beautifully, almost as if it understood the emotions she wanted to express. The uneven keys and imperfect sounds did not weaken the performance, they gave it character, made it more human, more real. By the time she reached the climax of her piece, she was fully immersed in the music. She had forgotten about the audience, the other contestants, and even the pressure of the CEO's gaze. All that existed was the music and her heart. She let herself feel every note, every rhythm, every pause, and the audience could feel it too. Their eyes were wide, some mouths slightly open, as if they could not believe what they were hearing. When the final note echoed through the hall, there was a moment of complete silence. The audience could barely breathe, stunned by what they had just witnessed. Then slowly the first clap came, soft and tentative. It grew louder, spreading through the room until it became a thunderous applause. People stood up, some cheering, some even wiping away tears, moved by the depth and honesty of her performance. The CEO stood as well, clapping slowly at first, then with increasing enthusiasm. He walked toward her and smiled, an expression she had never seen on his face before. "You have done something truly extraordinary," he said. "You have proven that talent, passion, and heart are stronger than any obstacle. You have inspired everyone here today, including me." His words were simple, yet they carried immense weight, and she felt a warmth spread through her chest. The audience continued to cheer as she stood and bowed. She felt a mixture of disbelief, pride, and gratitude. She had faced the challenge, exceeded expectations, and shown the world what she was capable of. The whispers of doubt from earlier had disappeared, replaced by admiration, respect, and even awe. People were no longer seeing her as the poor girl with an old piano. They were seeing her as a musician, an artist, and someone who had the courage to follow her dreams despite all odds. As she left the stage, she realized something important. This was more than a competition. It was a moment that proved to herself that she could face fear, challenge authority, and shine in her own way. Her old piano, her humble background, and the struggles she had endured had not held her back. They had shaped her, given her strength, and made her music so authentic. From that day forward, people would remember her not just for her talent, but for the courage and determination that had brought her to that stage. She had shown that anyone, no matter where they came from, could achieve greatness if they believed in themselves and their abilities. She had inspired not just the audience in the hall, but everyone who heard the story of the girl who faced the CEO's challenge and played. With all her heart, she walked out of the hall with her head held high, feeling the applause and admiration still ringing in her ears. She knew her journey was only beginning, that there would be more challenges ahead, but she also knew she had discovered something powerful, the strength within herself, the ability to touch people's hearts with her music, and the courage to never give up, no matter the odds. That day became a turning point, a moment that would shape her future. She had faced the harshest judgments, met the highest expectations, and had not only survived, but thrived. Her music had spoken louder than fear, louder than doubt, louder than any criticism. And in that moment, she knew that nothing could stop her as long as she had her passion, her courage, and her heart. After the applause had faded, she felt a mixture of excitement, relief, and disbelief. She had faced the CEO's challenge, played from her heart, and amazed everyone in the room. People were still talking about her performance, praising the courage and creativity she had shown. She walked off the stage slowly, letting herself take in the reality of what had just happened. For the first time, she felt that her dreams might actually be possible. The CEO approached her once more. His face was serious, but there was a warmth in his eyes that she had never seen before. "I want to help you," he said simply. "Your talent deserves more than just an old piano in a small room. I can offer you opportunities to study music properly, to develop your skills, and to make your music reach more people." She could hardly believe what she was hearing. After everything she had imagined, after all the nights spent dreaming in her small room, someone influential was offering her a real chance to grow her talent. He arranged for her to receive mentorship from professional musicians. She was given access to real pianos, music lessons, and guidance to improve her technique and expression. For a girl who had once only had an old, battered piano to play on, this was life-changing. She felt grateful beyond words, but at the same time, she knew that the journey ahead would require hard work, dedication, and courage. Opportunities were given, but success still depended on her effort and determination. Her family was overjoyed. Her parents, who had always worried about how she would survive in a world full of challenges, were proud beyond measure. They had always believed in her quietly, even when others had laughed or doubted her. Now, seeing her recognized and celebrated, they felt a mixture of pride, relief, and hope. Her younger siblings looked up to her, inspired by her courage and determination. She had become a symbol of what hard work and belief in oneself could achieve. She began her lessons with enthusiasm and humility. At first, the new pianos and guidance felt intimidating. There were so many new techniques to learn, so many rules she had never known. But she approached everything with the same determination that had carried her through her first performances. She practiced diligently every day, combining what she had learned from professionals with the creativity and emotion she had always played with. Slowly but surely, she improved, becoming not just a skilled pianist, but also an expressive artist. Capable of conveying emotions through every note, her story began to spread beyond the competition hall. Local newspapers wrote about the girl who had amazed the CEO. People shared her story online, inspiring thousands of others who faced struggles of their own. They saw in her a symbol of hope, proof that talent and determination could shine through even the harshest circumstances. Young musicians from humble backgrounds felt encouraged to pursue their dreams, believing that they too could overcome obstacles if they worked hard and followed their passion. Despite the recognition and praise, she never forgot her beginnings. She continued to practice on her old piano sometimes, remembering the hours she had spent playing in her small living room, learning through trial and error. She knew that those struggles had shaped her, had taught her patience, resilience, and the value of hard work. She also remembered the people who had doubted her, not with anger, but as a reminder that her journey was unique and that she had the power to prove what she was capable of. Over time, she performed in bigger halls, in front of larger audiences, and for important events. Each performance was an opportunity to share her story, not just through words, but through music. People who had once overlooked her began to recognize her talent, and she became known for her ability to play with both skill and emotion. Her music touched hearts, inspired dreams, and reminded everyone that true talent is not defined by background, wealth, or appearances. Her life began to change in many ways. She received scholarships, invitations to prestigious music schools, and opportunities to meet and learn from accomplished musicians. Yet she remained humble, always remembering that it was her love for music and her determination that had brought her this far. Fame and recognition did not change her. They only gave her a larger platform to inspire others. She wanted her story to be more than just her success. It was a message to anyone who felt small, overlooked, or limited by circumstances. The girl who had once played on a broken piano in a tiny, crowded home had now become a beacon of hope. She showed that passion, courage, and perseverance could overcome even the toughest challenges. Her story inspired not just musicians, but anyone who dreamed of a better life, anyone who faced obstacles and doubters. She became proof that dreams are possible when you believe in yourself and are willing to work for them. No matter how difficult the journey may seem, even as she continued to grow and succeed, she never lost the joy of playing music simply for herself. She remembered the quiet moments at home, the feeling of her fingers dancing across the old keys, and the happiness that music had always brought her. Those moments kept her grounded, reminded her of her journey, and fueled her passion for music. She knew that it was not just talent, but love for her craft and honesty in her expression that had won the hearts of everyone who had listened. In the end, her story was about more than just music or recognition. It was about courage in the face of doubt, determination in the face of struggle, and the power of believing in oneself. She had shown that no matter where you come from, what you have, or what others think of you, it is possible to shine if you follow your passion and never give up. She became an inspiration, a living example of hope, and a reminder that dreams can become reality when you trust yourself and work tirelessly to achieve them. Her journey was far from over, but she now knew the truth that had carried her through every challenge. Talent can come from anywhere, but it is courage, determination, and heart that turn that talent into something unforgettable. And as she played, whether in front of a few listeners or thousands, she always remembered that first old piano, the tiny living room, and the dream that had begun it all. That dream had grown into a life filled with music, opportunity, and inspiration for everyone who heard her story.